Hey there, welcome to our awesome channel. We've got some wild true stories that you won't believe, but they're 100% real. Sit back, relax, and let's dive right in. Aimo Koivunen was a Finnish soldier during World War II who found himself in an extraordinary situation, one that turned into one of the strangest survival stories in military history. His tale is one of desperation, hallucinations, an overdose that should have killed him, and an endurance feat so extreme it defies belief. The year was 1944, and Finland was locked in a brutal struggle against the Soviet Union in what was known as the Continuation War. It was a fight for survival in the frozen wilderness, a war of ambushes and endurance, where soldiers spent weeks at a time patrolling the vast snow-covered forests of Lapland. Lapland was not just a battlefield, it was a frozen abyss, a place where the cold could kill just as efficiently as a bullet. The region stretched over 100,000 square kilometers of tundra, mountains, and frozen rivers, a hostile land where winter temperatures could plummet to -50 degrees. Snow piled in thick, waist-high drifts, the wind howled mercilessly, and the sun barely crept above the horizon during the darkest months of the year. It was in this unforgiving landscape that Koivunen's nightmare would unfold. As part of an elite Finnish ski patrol, Koivunen and his unit were trained to glide swiftly and silently through the snow, their white camouflage blending seamlessly into the icy wilderness. These men were ghosts on skis, capable of covering dozens of kilometers a day with little rest, their survival dependent on their speed, their stealth, and their ability to outlast the enemy. But endurance had its limits. Fatigue was a constant enemy. Hunger gnawed at their ribs. Sleep was a luxury they couldn't afford. To combat exhaustion, the Finnish military, like the German Wehrmacht, issued its soldiers Pervitin, a methamphetamine-based stimulant. It was a drug designed to keep men awake for days, to push them beyond their physical and mental limits. A single pill could make a man feel invincible. Too many could drive him mad. Koivunen had never taken Pervitin before, but on that fateful day in March 1944, he would take more than any man should. It began with an ambush. Deep behind enemy lines, Koivunen's patrol was moving through the snow when the silence shattered. Gunfire ripped through the trees, Soviet soldiers emerged from the frost-covered undergrowth, and chaos erupted. The Finnish patrol was outnumbered, and they had no choice but to flee. Skis dug into the snow, bodies leaned forward, the chase had begun. Koivunen's lungs burned as he pushed forward, his legs screaming with exhaustion. The world blurred into a swirl of white and gray, the snow-covered trees rushing past as his heart pounded. But the Soviets were still behind him. His muscles ached, his breath came in ragged gasps, and his body begged for rest. That was when he remembered the Pervitin pills in his pack. Fumbling with numb, frozen fingers, he struggled to open the bottle. He only needed one, maybe two. But his hands were shaking. The cold made him clumsy. And as he tried to pour the pills into his palm, the entire bottle spilled into his mouth. 30 pills. The effect was almost immediate. His vision sharpened, his limbs felt weightless, and his exhaustion evaporated like mist in the sun. His heart slammed against his ribs. The world around him seemed to speed up, and suddenly he was skiing faster than he had ever moved before. He was a machine. He was unstoppable. And then the world fractured. Reality twisted. The trees began to shift and breathe. The snow beneath his feet rippled like water. Shadows stretched and lunged at him from the edges of his vision. Time became meaningless. Was he skiing for minutes? Hours? Days? His mind spiraled into a fevered blur, his body moving on pure instinct. He blacked out. When he woke up, he was still skiing. But he was alone. His unit was gone. His weapon was gone. He had no food, no supplies. Nothing but the drugs coursing through his veins and the endless empty expanse of snow stretching in every direction. He had no idea where he was or how much time had passed. All he knew was that he had to keep going. Somewhere along the way, he skied straight into a Soviet camp. But in his drugged-out state, reality was a shifting, dreamlike nightmare. Did he see the soldiers? Did they see him? Did he slip past them unnoticed, or did they simply stare at him in stunned disbelief, watching a wild-eyed, frost-covered wraith glide silently through their camp? To this day, no one knows how he escaped. The hunger came next, a deep, hollow agony in his stomach, growing sharper with every hour. The human body cannot survive long without fuel, but Koivunen had no food, no fire, nothing but the instinct to survive. He ate pine buds stripped from trees, snow packed into his mouth for water, and at one point, a raw bird, feathers and all. He should have stopped, but he couldn't. The overdose had turned him into something unnatural, something beyond exhaustion or pain. Days passed, his body was wasting away, his ribs pressing against his frozen skin. His fingers had gone numb long ago. His feet were raw with frostbite. And then the world exploded. A landmine. Koivunen had unknowingly skied into a Soviet minefield. The explosion tore through his leg, shredded his flesh, sent shockwaves of pain through his ruined body. The snow around him turned red. He collapsed, panting, his vision pulsing with white-hot agony. But he still did not stop moving. Crawling now, dragging his broken body forward, he fought against the darkness creeping at the edges of his vision. The cold bit deep into his wounds. His heart should have failed. His body should have given out. But something kept him going. By the time Finnish troops found him, he barely resembled a living man. His body was skeletal, weighing only 94 pounds. His temperature was dangerously low. He was on the brink of death. Doctors were stunned. He should not have survived. The amount of methamphetamine in his system was enough to kill several men. His heart should have given out long ago. Some theorized that the extreme cold had slowed his metabolism, preventing him from fully absorbing the overdose. Others believed it was something else, sheer willpower, an animalistic refusal to die. He was taken to a hospital where he made a full recovery. Against every possible odd, Aimo Koivunen had survived. He went on to live a long life, eventually passing away in 1989 at the age of 71. His story remains one of the most extraordinary survival tales in military history, yet outside of Finland, few people know his name. He was a soldier who skied 400 kilometers through the Arctic, overdosed on meth, survived starvation, frostbite, a landmine explosion, and a week-long chase by Soviet forces, yet refused to die. Against all odds, Aimo Koivunen survived the impossible.